Morning. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everybody can hear me okay, not too loud. You weren't kidding when you said you cannot see anybody. Uh, so, I'm going to talk about long-term preservation and archive storage. I work as a PM in Microsoft Azure. And today's discussion is mostly going to be about archive and long-term preservation. So, maybe with the show of hands, who all over here either work on archive storage technologies or have anything to do with it in your current roles? All right, that's a few. Cool. And then with show of hands, how many of you would like to store your data and not worry about it forever, either economically or technically or any which way? It's just there for you to have. All right, more hands. That's awesome. All right, hopefully you like this talk and this will get you interested. Uh, so here's on the left-hand side top, you see a normal pyramid. I'm sure you have seen this many times. Uh, it shows the various services that get offered on for storing data in the cloud. Premium services, standard services, and then archive storage services. Uh, Obviously, as you go up the pyramid, the data is hot, it's accessed more frequently, it's latency sensitive. There's storage metrics around it in terms of cost, performance, latencies. And there are storage technologies today that are being deployed in order to meet those metrics, like flash, hard drives, tape. And of course, there's a cost equation with each of those. It gets more expensive as you go up, it's cheaper as you go down. On the top right is the data age study that was done, which shows that the global data sphere will continue to grow. And we can see that more and evidence of that more and more as new applications are coming on board. Now, there may be small-term economic aberrations that may pause it, slow it down, but the overall long-term projection seems to hold. And then the bottom right chart shows all the different technologies that are available to go store those bits that come into play. The biggest difference between the top and the bottom right side chart is the y-axis. A very small fraction of the data that gets generated that you see on the top chart actually gets stored, which you see on the bottom one. And there are multiple reasons for that, but predominantly it's storage costs. It's budgets. Every enterprise has to work within a certain budget. They get to spend that budget. And the cheaper the storage, the more they can spend on that, and the more bits can be stored. And then, of course, technology gaps. Are the existing technologies sufficient to go meet the problems of the future? So we'll cover those three aspects here. So data lifecycle used to be the case that you create data, store it, use it, share it, archive it, and then eventually delete it. The predominant reason to go delete it is, one, you cannot afford it because it's too expensive, or the data doesn't provide you any more value than it used to, so why save it? What if we can think about a scenario where we don't have to think about deleting it at all, which means we are solving those two problems. With new applications, the data becomes more and more valuable. So even as a function of time, it doesn't lose its value to the same extent as it does on some of the previous applications. And then the storage costs are such that you have the ability to store it for a really, really long time. So that's the value creation. So the purple curve, it's the old life cycle where data got generated, it got stored, the value was really, really high, and as a function of time, that value eroded. And then depending on which technology you used to store that data, which is represented in technology A, B, C, if your technology was expensive, your time to deletion is much earlier in its life cycle, versus if your technology is cheaper, then you will save that data for much longer. And that's shown on the purple curve. With the newer life cycle, where we do see frequent hydrations of data, usage of data again and again. So those two peaks are representing those life cycle events where The data gets accessed, it gets used for something that is valuable for the enterprise, and then it gets stored again. And so as a function of that, not only is the value increasing, but with the cheaper storage cost, the time for deletion is extended by a long time as well. And our intention is to try and make it for as long as possible that you don't have to delete it. What's changing in the archive landscape is as the market grows, there are more and more applications or let's say subcategories within the archive segment that's coming into play. So it used to be archive and BCDR. Then there was the active archive, which is low latency access archive. And then there's data preservation, which is really, really long-term data preservation, which is required by certain businesses, where you cannot delete it until a certain point in time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, or even forever. Some of the business segments is financial regulations require you to save data for a particular number of years. Medical records need to be stored for many, many years. The ADAS obviously is a new and upcoming application. Government archives, media and entertainment would like to store their copies for a very long time as well, right? Never delete it. And now each of those subsegments within the archive segment have different aspects of performance that they need from the underlying storage tier. So latency needs to be low enough for active archive, but it can be very, very high for long-term data preservation. On the other side, the cost can be higher for active archive, but it needs to be really, really low for long-term data preservation. So they're competing metrics, and the challenge is, is one technology sufficient to go address all those, or do we need to try and find two different technologies, or maybe even more? Likely we should stick with one, but we should at least attempt to address that question. So that brings us to the archive workloads. So this is what we see in the fleet. The left-hand chart is showing you writes over reads ratio. That means how many more writes are done compared to reads. And this is based on different times. So you can look at it as days or months or years, whichever time scale you want to pick. But you can see up to more than 120 times of writes as compared to reads. So what that tells us is, obviously, for an archive tier, there is a lot of writes happening, but very, very, very infrequent or low reads happening. The right-hand side chart gives you some more insight into the reads themselves. The blue bars are indicating the percentage of reads, whereas the gray bars are representing, and it's the right-hand side axis, is representing the number of bytes. So a large number of reads come in, but they are really very small in terms of their size. And a very few number of reads come in, but they are demanding a very long or a large size. So we need to solve for both small read sizes, which are random in nature in terms of their access, and also low in terms of their latency. At the same time, larger reads, better throughput, and again, can we figure out a technology that can dynamically balance these two aspects so that you don't have to go and deploy many different technologies to address the same market? So given all of those things, meaning the economics, the archive workloads themselves, the different subsegments within the archive, what we really need is from a storage technology that can be lowest TCO, of course. That is cost of storage. That includes acquisition cost, operational cost, power, and media refreshes as well. So that's all combined together. Since it is a long-term technology, we want the media to be resilient, which means the media characteristics have to be such that once the data is written, it's immutable, durable, and then flexible and available. So we can scale the system based on what the end customer needs or what the service needs, which includes disaggregation of reads and writes in media. So we have been looking at technologies, and we believe Silica is one such technology that can help address this challenge and meet those objectives. So what is Silica? It's based on media, which is glass. Glass is, it has several nice characteristics to it, which makes it really good and cheap. Then there's a writer element to it, which is optical components, lasers, optics, which are used to actually write and etch data inside the glass. So that's the writer element of it. And then the reader element is, again, capturing the images and decoding them such that we can either do it sequentially if needed, or we can do it randomly as well. So both options are available. Writes are obviously sequential. And then all of this is managed by robotics in the sense that it can move glass platters from the writer to reader, back to the library, back to the reader, so on and so forth. So the data flow for Silica looks something like this. You have a blank platter. The blank platter comes in and is fed into the writer. This is done by robotics and library. The writer does its job. It will coalesce all the writes and sequentially write the platter from the beginning to the end. It's a warm technology, so it has to be verified. So once it's written, the platter goes into the reader. It does read verification to ensure that everything that was intended to be written is, in fact, written as intended. And then it gets stored. And then the platter is in storage until and unless it is retrieved for rehydration, or if a customer or if a service demands to be read, only then the platter comes and gets fed into the reader, and it reads again. And all of these things are, again, managed by the library and robotics assembly of how quickly you want to move the platters. So that gives us some flexibility on how the proximity to the readers, the writers, and the library itself. And we'll see that in a bit. So what makes Silica really great is its media properties. Right? Glass is available in abundance, and it's inexpensive, so that makes the media itself really cheap. We write into the media in a 3D fashion, so we don't write on the surface, but rather we write inside the surface. So the data is, so as to speak, sealed in glass. That makes glass is very resilient to temperature, humidity conditions, EMF-Proof, is a durable, bunch of good characteristics of glass that make the data really durable and immutable. No bit rot, no data corruption, and then media consumes no power. Once you write the data in glass and you store it, it's passive. It consumes no electricity or anything of that sort, and glass is recyclable. So if at all the data needs to be destroyed physically, and you can take the glass and make a new glass out of it. What Silica also gives us is disaggregation. So unlike existing technologies which come combined, media, read and write elements are all combined together, Silica gives us the opportunity to completely disaggregate all aspects of that. So you can have stand-up writers, stand-up readers, and stand-up library full of Silica glass platters. What that does is it gives us flexibility to go deploy readers, writers on an as-needed basis. So if there's huge data ingest, we can stand up more writers. If we need to go meet some stringent requirements for service-level agreements, we can stand up more readers, so we have more bandwidth for the readers. And if none of that, then we can just keep populating libraries with glass media as much as we want to store. The proximity, because robotics is an element that brings in some mechanical latencies in the sense of trying to go fetch the glass, put it back into the reader. Again, depending on the workloads, we could position them very close to each other or very far away from each other, depending on whether we need good low latencies or it can take its own sweet time to come to the reader. Now, in terms of challenges, the physics obviously works. We've proven it, so we know it works. There's hard engineering problems that still need to be solved. It's a new grounds-up technology, so nobody's done this in the past. It is new, and it's built for cloud scale. There's new data pipeline for encoding and decoding the data, so that is also something that is new. However, a lot of things that we do can be leveraged to a large extent, but the aspects that are related to just the technology itself are going to be new. And then dynamically scaling these independently of each other and putting them into data centers, that's another challenge, again, an engineering challenge that can be dealt with. So call to action really is there's a lot of new hardware, as you can imagine in this. The readers, writers, the library aspect of it. So all of those things are new hardware that needs to be developed and deployed at scale. The library mechanics itself, so the shuttles that can move the media, can it be evolved to handle any kind of media, just not Silica? So that's one opportunity for the industry to think about, to come together and figure out a library system that is agnostic to the media itself and can be applied to anything. There's going to be new supplier base. We'll need lasers, optics, cameras, so all that is something new that we have not done before in the storage industry as such. The safety enclosures in a data center, you don't want to be hit by a robot moving on the rail, of course, so there's things to think about that. There's media cleaning. Data centers, however clean over a long period of time, there can be some dust accumulation on media platters, especially if they're resident there for a very, very long time. So when it needs to be read, do we need to clean it? And if we need to clean it, what mechanism do we go ahead and implement? Footprint, data center footprint. We have different physical regions across the world, and if we need to go deploy this across every data center, every region, it needs to be such that it has no limitations in that sense. And taking it forward beyond cloud, even if it's an on-prem deployment, that too should be taken into consideration, and that may bring it in its more nuances about how do you design the racks and the reader racks, the writer racks, and the library racks. There's more information available on this if you're interested. There's really cool videos on Microsoft website. There's an SOSP paper that is going to come out next week, which will have much more technical, in-depth detail on exactly what Silica is. So I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Are there questions? We can take one or two questions. We have a mic here and a mic over here. I'll start off with a question while we wait. How fast can a single writer write?
So we do have some throughput numbers. We currently are not going to disclose them for reasons in terms of trying to maintain that secrecy, but it can definitely do better than what the existing magnetic media technologies can do. I can say that much.
Great, thank you. We have a question over here.
Sure.
Thank you. That's a very good overview. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
So we're seeing a problem with long-term preservation. My company's Channel Science, and we're working with Department of Energy to, just like you said, with the life cycle, the data has new value, old data has new value. They actually have irreproducible scientific data from the 60s and 70s they're trying to recover. So we're creating better than ever tape drives to do that. Some of the things we're learning from that could apply to you, though, is underlying all storage is that constant improvement of capacity, of areal density. And the more you increase the areal density, the less backward compatible you are. So if we project this out 50 or 100 years, how are you planning to balance the need to improve the areal density and still be able to read 100-year-old media?
Yeah, no, that's really a good question. So that is very front and center for us because existing technologies are probably only 2 generations backward compatible. So our intent and attempt on the technology front is to make it as not 2, but more generations longer. As we design our readers and writers and glass density for the future, we are taking that into account. I cannot say that we can do something that will last for 100 years, but at least we can do something which will last much longer than 2 generations that current technologies do support. So that is certainly front and center and very, very much discussed on a daily basis, I would say.
Thank you.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so one question. So also areal density related. So what areal densities do you achieve right now? How does it compare to hard disk drives, tape drives? And
Yeah, so
what growth in areal density do you project going into the future?
yeah, so I cannot give you the exact number, but we are currently at multiple terabytes per platter. So that's where we are currently.
And the size of the platter is?
The size of the platter is 120 by 120
Okay.
mm. So it's a square. So we are at multiple terabytes today. I cannot give you the exact number, unfortunately. And we do have a roadmap that significantly keeps increasing that at a good CAGR rate, going on up to 10 years out.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll go to our next talk here.